Until the police opened the bag, everyone thought he was just another homeless man. But the documents inside mobilized the FBI, the IRS, and Wall Street, because those documents revealed a $50 billion secret. But I can't tell you what it was yet, because first, you need to understand why a father chose to abandon his own child. The fluorescent lights of the 42nd Street subway station hummed overhead, casting their harsh white glow on the endless stream of commuters who passed through New York's underground arteries every day. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything, though none of the rushing office workers, tourists, or early morning travelers had any idea what was about to unfold in the corner where he sat. David Chen had been crying in that same spot for 5 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Every morning, he would emerge from the maintenance tunnels where he spent his nights, carrying the same weathered canvas bag that had become his only possession, and he would sit in the corner near the newsstand where the morning light filtered down from the street above. Most people ignored him. New York had taught its residents to look through the homeless, to step around them like obstacles rather than acknowledge them as human beings. But David was different from the other street dwellers in ways that no one could see. His clothes, while dirty and worn, had once been expensive. His hands, though calloused now from 5 years of rough living, still carried the manicured softness of someone who had never known manual labor. And his eyes held a depth of loss that spoke of something far greater than mere poverty. Detective Maria Santos had been riding the subway to work for 12 years, and she had noticed David about 3 years ago. Something about him stood out. Maybe it was the way he cried, not with the desperate wailing of mental illness or the angry sobs of addiction, but with a quiet, controlled grief that seemed almost dignified. She had tried to talk to him once, offering to help him find shelter or connect him with social services, but he had simply shaken his head and thanked her politely before returning to his silent vigil. Today was different, though. Today, David's usually controlled weeping had escalated to something that was drawing attention from even the most hardened New York commuters. He was clutching his canvas bag against his chest with a desperation that bordered on panic, and his cries carried a note of anguish that made several people stop and stare. Marcus Williams, a social worker who ran outreach programs for the homeless, had been called by concerned subway employees who had noticed David's distress. Marcus had worked with thousands of homeless individuals over his 15-year career, but something about David had always puzzled him. The man spoke with perfect grammar, displayed knowledge of current events that suggested education and intelligence, and carried himself with a bearing that seemed inconsistent with long-term homelessness. "David," Marcus said, kneeling down beside the corner where the older man sat. "It's me, Marcus. Can you tell me what's wrong? You seem more upset than usual today." David looked up with red-rimmed eyes that were filled with a pain so raw that Marcus actually stepped back. It's her birthday today," David whispered, his voice barely audible above the noise of the subway. "She would have been 21 today." This was the most personal information David had ever shared in the 3 years Marcus had been trying to help him. "Who, David? Who would have been 21? But David just shook his head, clutching his bag tighter. I can't talk about it. I promised myself I would never." Before Marcus could respond, the situation escalated dramatically. 3 transit police officers approached, drawn by reports of a disturbance from commuters who were uncomfortable with David's visible emotional breakdown. "Sir," Officer Jennifer Park said, her voice carrying the authoritative tone that came with 5 years of dealing with subway incidents, "we're going to need you to move along. You're causing a disturbance." Marcus stood up, his social worker instincts kicking in. "Officer, this man isn't causing any trouble. He's just upset. I'm a licensed social worker and I can—" "Sir, please step aside," Officer Park interrupted. "We've had reports of erratic behavior and we need to check his bag for everyone's safety." David's reaction was immediate and startling. The man who had been docile and cooperative for 5 years suddenly became agitated in a way that none of them had ever seen. "No," he said, his voice rising. "You can't look in the bag. Please, I'm not hurting anyone. Just let me be." Officer Park's partner, Officer James Rodriguez, moved closer. In his 8 years of subway patrol, he had learned to recognize when situations were about to escalate, and David's sudden protectiveness of his bag triggered every instinct he had developed. "Sir, we're going to need you to open the bag voluntarily, or we'll have to detain you and search it ourselves," Officer Rodriguez said. "There have been security concerns, and we can't allow unattended or suspicious bags in the subway system." David's face went pale. For a moment, he looked like he might run, but where could a 63-year-old homeless man go in a subway station surrounded by police? Instead, he did something that surprised everyone present. He carefully set the bag down, took several steps back, and sat down hard on the concrete floor. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please don't open it. You don't understand what it will mean." But protocol was protocol, and Officer Park was already pulling on latex gloves. The small crowd of commuters who had gathered to watch the drama unfold pressed closer, their morning routines forgotten in favor of this unexpected entertainment. When Officer Park opened the canvas bag, her first reaction was confusion. Instead of the bottles, needles, or makeshift weapons she might have expected from a homeless man's belongings, she found herself looking at documents. Lots of documents. And they were in pristine condition, protected by plastic sleeves and organized with a precision that seemed completely at odds with David's circumstances. She pulled out the first document and read the header. Her expression changed immediately from routine enforcement to genuine shock. "Jesus Christ," she whispered before catching herself and looking around at the crowd. Officer Rodriguez moved closer. "What is it?" Officer Park held up a document that appeared to be some kind of corporate filing. This is a stock certificate for Chen Industries, and it's..." She looked at the numbers again, certain she was misreading them. "It's for controlling interest in the company." Marcus, who had been watching from a few feet away, felt his world shift. Chen Industries was one of the largest private equity firms in the world. He had read about them in the business pages, a company worth billions with investments in everything from tech startups to real estate to pharmaceutical research. Officer Rodriguez took the document and examined it more closely. The name on the certificate read David Chen, and it was dated 7 years ago. But that wasn't what made his hands start shaking. It was the signature at the bottom, which appeared to be notarized and official, and the dollar value listed for the shares. "This says $52 billion, Officer Rodriguez said, his voice barely above a whisper. The crowd pressed closer, but Officer Park was already pulling more documents from the bag. There were bank statements from institutions he had never heard of, showing account balances that seemed to have too many zeros. There were real estate deeds for properties in Manhattan, Los Angeles, London, and Tokyo. There were insurance policies, investment portfolios, and what appeared to be documentation for a private foundation. But it was the photograph that stopped everyone cold. At the bottom of the bag, wrapped carefully in plastic, was a framed picture of David, but not the David they knew. This David was wearing an expensive suit, standing next to a beautiful woman in an elegant dress, both of them smiling at a young girl who couldn't have been more than 15. The girl had David's eyes and the woman's smile, and she was wearing what appeared to be a high school graduation gown. Officer Park turned the frame over and read the inscription on the back. "To the best daddy in the world, thank you for always believing in me. Love forever, Amy. June 15th, 2018. Marcus did the math quickly in his head. If Amy had graduated high school in 2018, she would indeed be turning 21 today. David, who had been watching the document examination with the resignation of a man whose deepest secrets were being exposed, finally spoke. "Her name was Amy," he said quietly. "Amy Chen. And today is her birthday." Officer Park looked from the photograph to David and back again. David's face crumpled, and for the first time in 5 years, his carefully controlled grief gave way to complete emotional breakdown. "She died," he sobbed. "She died because of me, because of the money, because of everything I built." The crowd had grown larger, and Marcus could see people pulling out phones to record what was clearly becoming a viral moment. But something about David's pain was so raw, so genuine, that even the most cynical New Yorkers seemed to sense they were witnessing something sacred rather than scandalous. "David," Marcus said gently, "can you tell us what happened?" David looked up at him with eyes that held 5 years' worth of accumulated guilt and self-hatred. "I was David Chen, CEO and founder of Chen Industries. I built that company from nothing, made it worth $50 billion, and I thought that made me successful. I thought money meant security. I thought wealth meant I could protect the people I loved." He gestured weakly at the documents scattered around Officer Park. "All of that belongs to me. Every stock certificate, every property deed, every bank account. I walked away from all of it 5 years ago, and I've been living down here ever since." Officer Rodriguez was looking at his smartphone, quickly searching for information about Chen Industries. What he found made his blood run cold. David Chen, CEO of Chen Industries, disappeared 5 years ago after his daughter Amy Chen was killed in a kidnapping attempt gone wrong. The kidnappers were demanding a $100 million ransom. The subway station had gone completely quiet, except for the distant rumble of approaching trains. Even the usual urban noise seemed muted as David's story began to unfold. "They took her," David continued, his voice hollow. "3 men who knew exactly how much I was worth, exactly where she went to school, exactly how to get to her. They grabbed her outside her private school and demanded $100 million for her return." Marcus sat down beside David, no longer caring about protocol or procedures. "What happened?" "I paid it," David said simply. "Of course I paid it. I would have paid 10 times that amount, but they killed her anyway. The FBI found her body 3 days later in a warehouse in Queens. The kidnappers had panicked when they realized how much media attention the case was getting." Officer Park was still holding the photograph, looking at Amy's bright, trusting smile. "David, I'm so sorry. But why did you leave? Why did you give up everything?" David laughed, but it was a sound completely devoid of humor. "Because I realized that everything I had built, everything I had worked for, everything I thought was protecting my family, it's what killed her. If I had been nobody, if I had been poor, if I had been invisible like I am now, they never would have taken her. My success, my wealth, my name in the newspapers, it painted a target on the back of the person I loved most in the world." The implications of what he was saying began to sink in for everyone present. This man had chosen to give up $50 billion, had chosen homelessness and poverty and 5 years of living in subway tunnels, because he believed his wealth had cost him his daughter. "So I walked away," David continued. "I transferred everything to my lawyers with instructions to liquidate it all and donate it to missing children organizations. I threw away my phone, destroyed my credit cards, and came down here to disappear. Because if David Chen the billionaire was gone, maybe other fathers wouldn't have to lose their daughters the way I lost mine." Officer Rodriguez was still scrolling through search results on his phone. "David, according to this, your lawyers have been looking for you for 5 years. They say the donation instructions you left were unclear, and they need your signature to proceed with the liquidation. There are billions of dollars just sitting in legal limbo because you disappeared." David shook his head. "I don't want it. I never want to see any of it again." Marcus leaned forward. "David, what if there was another way? What if you could use that money to make sure no other parent goes through what you went through?" For the first time since the bag had been opened, David looked up with something that might have been interest. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if David Chen the billionaire could save other children instead of endangering them? What if that $50 billion could fund the kind of security, the kind of prevention programs, the kind of law enforcement resources that could stop what happened to Amy from happening to other kids?" The crowd around them had grown even larger, but it was a respectful crowd now. Word was spreading through social media about the homeless billionaire, but the tone was shifting from sensationalism to something approaching reverence as people began to understand the magnitude of David's loss and sacrifice. Officer Park carefully gathered all the documents and placed them back in the canvas bag. Mr. Chen, we're going to need to contact the FBI about this, not because you're in trouble, but because there are a lot of people who have been very worried about you." David nodded wearily. "I know. I've seen the missing person reports in the newspapers people leave behind. I know my sister hired private investigators. I know the company has been in chaos without me, but I couldn't face going back to that world." As they walked toward the subway exit together, David carrying his canvas bag full of secrets that were no longer secret, he turned to Marcus with a question that would define the rest of his life. "Do you really think she would have wanted me to use the money to help other children?" Marcus smiled, thinking of the bright-eyed girl in the photograph who had called David the best daddy in the world. "I think Amy would be proud of you either way, but I think she'd be especially proud if you found a way to turn your loss into other families' salvation." 6 months later, the Amy Chen Foundation would become the largest privately funded organization dedicated to child safety and kidnapping prevention in the world. David Chen, no longer homeless but forever changed by his 5 years underground, would dedicate the rest of his life to making sure no parent would ever have to choose between wealth and safety the way he had. And every year on June 15th, on Amy's birthday, he would return to that corner in the 42nd Street subway station. Not to cry, but to remember the day when losing everything helped him find his way home. The $50 billion secret wasn't just about money. It was about a father's love, a daughter's memory, and the recognition that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the lives we save and the hope we give to others. If this story of loss, love, and redemption touched your heart like it touched everyone in that subway station, please hit that like button and subscribe to True Hero Stories. We share powerful narratives about ordinary people who make extraordinary sacrifices and the moments when love triumphs over tragedy. Do you have stories about people who turned their greatest loss into their greatest purpose? Share them in the comments below. Your story might be featured in our next episode and inspire millions around the world. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and let us know if you've ever witnessed someone transform pain into purpose. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who lose everything and choose to help others instead of seeking revenge. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that matter. Thank you for joining us on True Hero Stories, where we believe every act of love and sacrifice deserves to be shared with the world. Do you have stories about military heroes or moments when someone finally got the recognition they deserved? Share them in the comments below. Your story might be featured in our next episode and told to the world. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and let us know if you've ever witnessed a moment when justice finally prevailed. Remember, true heroes often fight their battles in silence, but their stories deserve to be heard by everyone. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories that matter. Thank you for honoring our military heroes by watching, and we'll see you in the next True Hero Stories episode, where we continue to share the stories that inspire, honor, and remind us of the extraordinary people who serve our nation.